The worst part wasn't the folding chair. It was the way the candlelight from the ballroom hit the floor just before it faded into the service hallway. Like even the light knew where not to go. I stood there, dress shoes sinking slightly into industrial carpet, staring at the damn place card. Roy Patterson. Legacy operations. Not even a table number. Just those two words that might as well have been a death certificate. Legacy operations. Like I was some old piece of equipment they kept around for spare parts. My name is Roy Patterson. I'm 47 years old, and I've been keeping the guts of this company running for 19 years. While everyone else was inside clinking champagne glasses and pretending they all belonged, I was sweating by the kitchen, holding a name card that told me exactly what they thought of me. Inside the ballroom, Shane Morrison was making his rounds. At 29, he had the VP operations title that should have been mine, along with an MBA from some fancy school and the kind of confidence that only comes from never having to fix anything yourself. Shane Morrison, nephew of the CEO, looked straight at me through the glass door and smirked like he'd been waiting all night for this exact moment. Some people just struggle with digital transformation, he called out, not even lowering his voice. A few executives nearby chuckled and kept walking. They got the joke. Roy Patterson, the legacy employee who still believed in backup systems and manual checkpoints. How quaint. I didn't move, I didn't blink. I just bent down, picked up the card, tucked it into my jacket pocket like a receipt for every damn thing I'd swallowed this year, and left. I didn't sit in the parking lot feeling sorry for myself. Didn't blast classic rock while staring at the building. I drove home in silence, hands steady on the wheel, heart pounding in my chest like machinery that needed attention. What nobody in that ballroom knew, not Shane, not the corporate yes men with their designer watches, was that I'd been preparing for this moment. Maybe not this exact humiliation, but for the day they'd finally show me what I really meant to them. I wasn't angry. I was methodical. For 4 months, I'd been building something quiet. A digital failsafe buried so deep in our systems that it looked like legacy code from the Clinton administration. I called it Phoenix Protocol, mostly because naming it made me feel less invisible. The logic was beautiful in its simplicity. If my badge ever logged out of the building and stayed out for more than 8 hours, the system would start asking questions it couldn't answer. The irony was perfect. I'd submitted the original backup proposal to Shane's uncle last fall. Lance Wheeler, our CEO, had looked at it for about 30 seconds before sliding it back across his desk. Roy, we need to think more like a startup, less like a government contractor. He liked dashboards that looked pretty on his iPad. I liked systems that worked when someone was screaming at them at 2 a.m. Shane had taken that philosophy and turned it into a religion. Over the past 6 months, he'd gutted every redundancy we had, fired half my team, and reassigned the others to innovation initiatives that looked suspiciously like busy work. He killed our manual backups because nobody uses paper anymore, Roy. This isn't 1995, except when the main server hiccups on a Sunday night and your entire distribution network is waiting for Monday morning confirmations. Those old school backup logs were the difference between smooth operations and a logistics nightmare. But fine, let him mock the clipboard I kept in the server room. I didn't need to argue anymore. Every permissions renewal, every system access key, every critical pathway had been quietly rerouted through a dormant executable I'd buried in the archives. Time-stamped for activation if 2 conditions were met. My badge showed an off-site exit and no secondary authentication was logged within 8 hours. It wasn't a bomb. It was a dimmer switch. If triggered, nothing would crash spectacularly. Instead, everything would just drift, like a car slowly running out of gas. Orders would start lagging. Confirmations would bounce back with vague error codes. Inventory counts would stop syncing. Nothing loud enough to cause panic, just enough to plant doubt. The point wasn't chaos. The point was proof that without the people they called legacy employees, their shiny new systems would sputter and die. By the time I pulled into my driveway, it was 8:22 p.m. I texted Kelly Martinez, technically Shane's assistant, but smart enough to know who really kept things running, and told her to take Monday off. She texted back one word: cop. The woman understood timing better than most directors. I walked into my house, kicked off the dress shoes I only wore to funerals and shareholders' dinners, poured 3 fingers of bourbon, and sat on my couch staring at the ceiling. That name card was still in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out, smoothed the crease with my thumb, and stuck it on the refrigerator next to a photo of my ex-wife and me at Yellowstone. Ancient history, both of them. Legacy operations. That was going to make one hell of a chapter title someday. Shane Morrison thought leadership was volume plus vocabulary. Say synergy enough times, wear expensive suits, and pretend that spreadsheets were beneath you. He once told a room full of department heads execution is emotional, not procedural. You could practically hear the compliance department crying. The kid had never built anything in his life, never spent a weekend in the server room, never had to explain to angry customers why their orders were delayed, never had to choose between a system upgrade and making payroll. His biggest challenge was deciding which business school buzzword to use in meetings. And in the months before tonight's dinner, he'd gotten bolder. Started calling people like me legacy employees in meetings. Suggested we needed fresh perspectives and digital native thinking. When I pushed back on eliminating our backup protocols, he actually laughed. "Roy, nobody plans for failure anymore. That's old school thinking." Right? Nobody plans for failure except the people who have to clean up the mess when success goes sideways. But I'd already started preparing for this conversation months ago. Every critical system access, every administrative override, every database query that kept our logistics network breathing had been slowly funneled through a single point of control. A dormant program called Phoenix Core DXE, buried in a folder within a folder, time-stamped to activate at midnight if my access credentials went dark. It wasn't sabotage, it was a pause button they never knew existed. The second I crossed the threshold of those hotel doors, my badge sent its final ping. One last handshake with the network at 8:22 p.m. But that timestamp was everything, because 6 layers deep in our dispatch servers, beneath quarterly reports and vendor contracts, and one mislabeled photo that was actually a system map, sat a line of code waiting patiently for this moment. Phoenix protocol engaged. Await authentication. I'd written it on a Sunday back in September, sitting at my kitchen table with a heating pad on my back and a pot of coffee within reach. Built it like a ghost in the machine. Not a weapon, just a question mark in the system's conversation with itself. The 8-hour buffer started the moment my badge went cold. If no authorized input was logged by morning, meaning either I came back and authenticated, or someone with board-level clearance overrode the lock, then the system would begin to hesitate. New orders wouldn't generate confirmations. Existing shipments would lose their routing updates. Back-end processes would start reporting minor discrepancies that would cascade into bigger problems. Nothing catastrophic, just erosion. Like a tire with a slow leak. Confidence would drain away 1 psi at a time. I went home, changed into jeans and an old work shirt, and made a sandwich with too much mustard. Watched a Clint Eastwood movie where everyone talks tough and means what they say. Every 15 minutes or so, I'd glance at my work phone on the coffee table. No calls, no texts. Perfect. Around 11:30 p.m., I checked the remote monitoring logs on my laptop. The system had already flagged 2 timeout errors trying to process the evening's vendor reconciliation. At 11:47, the operations dashboard showed a lag in manifest processing. At 12:01 a.m. exactly, the buffer expired, and Phoenix Protocol quietly went active. No alarms, no crashes, just a heartbeat that skipped once in the digital bloodstream. Shane, meanwhile, was probably still riding high from his dinner speech, telling someone about his streamlined operational philosophy while nursing an overpriced scotch. He didn't know that the platform he'd streamlined was about to remind him what happens when you remove the safety net without asking who wove it. The beautiful part? I'd left a memo about this back in November. Operational continuity requirements and administrative fail-safes. 3 pages of policy language that nobody bothered to read. But the framework was there, documented and filed, waiting for someone to notice. This wasn't revenge, this was education. While Shane was probably telling war stories about modernizing legacy systems, something else was happening. At 2:15 a.m., our Memphis hub logged a delay in overnight processing. Just a few minutes, they figured it was a printer issue. At 2:33, a manifest verification failed its autosync. Then at 3:01 a.m. sharp, the first system lock quietly activated. One of the overnight supervisors tried to pull up the dispatch queue to clear a backlog. The screen just hung there, spinning like it was thinking really hard about a simple request. After 2 minutes, a red banner appeared, primary authentication failure, administrative override required. He tried again, same result, called his manager. She tried her credentials, nothing. By 3:30, every outbound route from Tennessee to Texas was stalled. An overnight supervisor tried to override the dispatch system using emergency protocols. Access denied, tried again with higher level credentials. Still denied. Then the system displayed a message that made everyone stop talking. Phoenix protocol active. Authentication required. R. Patterson or board override. By 4:15 a.m., someone had dragged Shane out of whatever after party he was attending. He showed up at headquarters looking like he'd been dressed by a committee of drunk college students. Wrinkled shirt, crooked tie, shoes that probably cost more than most people's rent. He stormed into the operations center, yelling about system glitches and demanding someone just reboot the damn servers. When that didn't work, he started making calls. Loud ones. At one point, he slammed his hand on a desk and shouted, "This is ridiculous. It's a bug. Clear the cache and restart everything." But it wasn't a bug. It wasn't restartable. Because it wasn't built to fail, it was built to wait. And it was waiting for one of two things: my return or board authorization. Shane had neither. He'd never read the November memo. Or maybe he had and didn't understand words like administrative continuity and dual authentication protocols. Too much bureaucratic language for someone who thought in hashtags and elevator pitches. At 5:23 a.m., my phone finally lit up. Not a call, just a forwarded message from someone in the Phoenix distribution center. No greeting, no explanation, just a screenshot of an error message and one question: is this normal? I didn't respond. By sunrise, 4 of our regional hubs were effectively frozen. Detroit's dispatch system had stopped updating entirely. Houston was generating duplicate manifests for orders that didn't exist. Portland was still scanning packages, but none of the data was reaching the main servers. Atlanta had sent a message through a backup vendor portal. Are we under attack? I sipped my morning coffee and watched the alerts roll in like storm reports. Not panicked messages, not desperate pleas, just confused questions from people who were starting to realize this wasn't a normal Monday morning technical issue. Shane showed up at headquarters looking like he'd slept in his car. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His hair looked like he'd been running his hands through it all night, and his voice was already hoarse from yelling at people who didn't have the answers he wanted. I saw the security footage later. Shane pacing the operations floor like a caged animal, waving his phone at anyone who'd listen, shouting about system failures and rolling back updates as if you could undo a locked system by speaking louder. At 7:30 a.m., someone from legal walked across the floor with a folded piece of paper and handed it to him. He read it, then read it again, then went pale enough that I thought he might need medical attention. It was a request from the board. Conference call. Immediately. No delays, no excuses. I was already on the call. Camera off. Display name showing only R. Patterson, Senior Infrastructure. There were 7 board members on screen, some in suits, some clearly pulled from their homes judging by the kitchen and bedroom backgrounds. But every one of them looked alert, focused, and nobody was smiling. Shane joined 8 minutes late, which in board time might as well be 8 hours. His connection was shaky. His camera kept cutting out, and he looked like he was calling from his car. "Roy," Lance Wheeler said, his voice carrying the kind of calm that comes right before a storm, "is this your lock?" I didn't flinch. Yes. Phoenix protocol activated per documented fail-safe procedures dated November 15th. There was a pause heavy enough to crush diamonds. You could hear someone breathing across an open mic. "Can you release it?" "Yes," I said, "but not without board authorization per clause 7.2. Another pause. Shane, clearly scrambling for relevance, jumped in. "This is completely unacceptable. He's paralyzed half our infrastructure without warning." "Shane," Lance said, sharp enough to cut glass, "we're not here to debate management philosophy." Then, turning back to me, Clause 7.2 requires what exactly? Board consensus for manual override or direct authorization from the implementing administrator. I wasn't bluffing. I'd written that clause myself, buried it in last year's operational continuity update during the annual compliance review. Shane had signed off on it along with 47 other policy documents, too busy planning his next presentation to read past the cover pages. Lance leaned back in his chair. Board silence isn't like regular silence. It's got weight, edges, consequences. "We'll need 10 minutes, he said. "Stay on the line." Shane muted himself, but not before muttering something that sounded like a prayer to the god of startup buzzwords. I muted too, but kept my camera active. Coffee warm in my hands, laptop showing the steady scroll of system logs, quiet proof of everything I'd built and everything they'd ignored. When they came back, Lance spoke like a surgeon making an incision. Precise, clean, final. "Roy, we're prepared to authorize the release. but we need assurance that full functionality will be restored immediately. I'd already prepared the restoration package. The rollback script was clean, tested, documented. What they were asking for wasn't about trust, it was about liability. I opened a shared folder titled Contingency Documentation and uploaded a single file. Terms for system restoration. Immediate reinstatement at current title with expanded authority over all infrastructure operations. I read aloud, full administrative access restored to all operational systems. Shane's face went through several interesting color changes. Removal of Mr. Morrison from any technical decision-making authority. He may retain advisory capacity, but will be excluded from infrastructure command chain. I kept going without waiting for reactions. Phoenix Protocol to remain active as permanent operational safeguard, requiring board vote for future deactivation. One more breath. Complete audit of all system modifications authorized by Mr. Morrison in the past 6 months, with rollback authority for changes deemed operationally unsound. A long silence stretched across the video conference. Lance leaned forward, hands folded. So ordered, it wasn't a negotiation, it was a diagnosis, and the prescription had my name on it. Shane went white as printer paper. His mouth opened, but nothing came out except a sound like air leaking from a balloon. Nobody looked at him. Not the CFO who used to nod at his every suggestion. Not the compliance director he'd pressured into approving risky changes. Not even his uncle, who suddenly seemed very interested in something off camera. Everyone was already listening to something else. The numbers, the logs, the shipping delays, the customer complaints that would start rolling in by noon. Numbers don't lie, and the math was simple. Without Roy Patterson, their streamlined operation was about as functional as a car without an engine. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just uploaded the restoration key to the shared environment and said, "System restore will execute in 90 seconds." Lance nodded. "We'll be monitoring." "Of course," I said, and ended the call. I pulled up the Phoenix Protocol interface one last time before it went dormant again. Green lights cascaded across my laptop screen as systems came back online. Memphis reported normal processing. Houston's duplicate orders cleared themselves. Portland's data stream resumed. Atlanta confirmed all systems operational. 19 years of infrastructure knowledge, activated in a single night, had just reminded everyone why experience matters more than buzzwords. The company's entire logistics network had spoken with one voice, and that voice had said my name. The parking lot was already filling up when I pulled in Tuesday morning. Normal business hours, normal routine. Like the past 18 hours had been a bad dream everyone was eager to forget. I walked through the main entrance, nodded at security, same guard who'd been there when I started 19 years ago, and placed my thumb on the scanner. It beeped green immediately. "Welcome back, Mr. Patterson," the electronic voice said, like it had missed me. Inside, the operations center hummed with the quiet efficiency of systems that were working again. Screens displayed clean data streams. Confirmation packets flowed through networks like blood, through healthy veins. Regional hubs reported green status across the board. I didn't need to make announcements. I just sat down at my workstation, logged in with credentials that now had broader access than ever before, and watched everything settle back into its natural rhythm. The staff barely looked up. Not from disrespect, but from relief. The kind that doesn't need applause, just the knowledge that someone competent was back at the controls. Sarah from logistics nodded at me from across the room. Mike from inventory gave a thumbs up. These were people who understood what kept the lights on. Shane was on the other side of the glass partition that separated the executive wing from the operations floor. I could see him through the window, standing near some decorative plants, still wearing his badge but looking like a man whose keycard no longer opened the doors that mattered. He didn't try to come in. Just stood there, hands in his pockets, watching the system he'd once called bloated and obsolete purr back to life without him. An executive walked past him carrying a manila folder. Shane stepped forward, maybe to ask a question, maybe just to feel included. She didn't even slow down, just walked past him like he was furniture that someone had left in the wrong room. That folder probably contained the beginning of the audit I'd requested. 6 months of Shane's innovations about to be examined by people who understood the difference between efficiency and recklessness. Around noon, Kelly Martinez appeared at my desk with a steaming cup of coffee and a slight smile. "Thought you might need this," she said, setting it down next to my keyboard. "Thanks, Kelly. How's your morning been?" "Quiet," she said. Very quiet. The way it should be. She walked away without elaborating, but I understood. The chaos was over. The system was breathing normally again. People could do their jobs without wondering if their boss's latest disruption would break something critical. I ran a full diagnostic, checked system health across all networks, and added one final entry to the operations log. Phoenix protocol active, all systems nominal. Infrastructure secure. No signature needed. The people who mattered already knew who wrote it. That afternoon, Lance Wheeler appeared in the operations center. Not to visit, not to inspect, but to talk. He pulled up a chair next to my workstation, something I'd never seen him do in 19 years. "Roy," he said, "I owe you an apology. I kept typing, finishing a routine maintenance check." "No need, Lance. Just doing my job. That's exactly the problem. You've been doing your job, and everyone else's, and we've been taking it for granted." He paused, watching the screens around us display the steady flow of data that kept his company profitable. "Shane's been reassigned to strategic planning, effective immediately. Strategic planning. Corporate purgatory. A windowless office where ambitious MBAs went to write reports nobody would read until they found the courage to update their LinkedIn profiles. And you," Lance continued, "are being promoted to Chief Infrastructure Officer, full authority over all technical operations. Your salary," he named a figure that was 40% higher than what I'd been making, "and I'd like you to start building a team. Real infrastructure people. Not consultants, not interns with computer science degrees. People who understand systems." I saved my work and turned to face him. "I'll need to hire back some of the people Shane let go. Done. Whatever you need. And I want full budget authority for redundancy systems. No more arguments about overhead and efficiency gains." Credited. "One more thing," I said. "I want to start a mentorship program. Pair experienced technical people with younger staff. Real knowledge transfer, not just documentation." Lance smiled for the first time since I'd known him. "That sounds like something a chief infrastructure officer should handle." The following Thursday brought its own kind of theater. The quarterly operations review, complete with catered lunch, PowerPoint presentations, and executives trying to look like they understood what they were approving. I arrived exactly on time. No dramatic entrance, no statement to make. Just showed up and did my job. Like always. But this time, my name card was different. Roy Patterson, Chief Infrastructure Officer, center table, right next to Lance Wheeler, printed on cardstock that didn't bend when you picked it up. Around me, conversation flowed like water finding a new course. Small adjustments, subtle realignments, the kind of changes that happen when the organizational chart gets redrawn by competence instead of connections. I glanced around the room and spotted Shane near the back, standing in that awkward space between relevance and exit. No name card this time. No presentation slot. No staff flanking him like he was someone whose opinion mattered. Just a 29-year-old former VP with expensive shoes and nowhere important to be. Our eyes met across the room, brief and unfiltered. I wasn't angry anymore. That had expired like an old password, replaced by something more useful. Certainty. He looked like he might say something. Maybe an apology, maybe an attempt to salvage some dignity, but nothing came out except the slight tightening of his jaw, the last reflex of someone trying to maintain authority they'd never actually earned. Someone called my name from the podium. I turned toward the voice without hesitation, leaving Shane as just another figure in my peripheral vision, someone the room had already learned to see through. As I walked to the front to present the infrastructure roadmap for the coming year, I thought about the young engineers I'd be hiring next week. People who wanted to learn how systems really worked, not just how to describe them in meetings. People who understood that behind every smooth operation was someone who'd spent years learning how to make complicated things look simple. That's how these things really end, not with explosions or dramatic confrontations, just a quiet shift in gravity. One person moves toward the center, another drifts toward the edges, and eventually everyone stops noticing the difference. Shane's exile wasn't loud. It was precise, permanent, and probably more devastating than any public humiliation could have been. Because there's nothing quite like being forgotten while you're still in the room. And there's nothing quite like being remembered for keeping everything running when nobody else could. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't making noise, it's letting the silence speak for itself, showing the world what happens when competence walks away and incompetence is left to explain the wreckage. In the end, respect isn't something you can demand or inherit, It's something you earn one crisis at a time, one system at a time, one quiet moment of keeping everything running when no one else knows how.